Alrighty, welcome back. Today, the video is going to be called Socionics to MBTI. What the hell are these letters? Okay, so if you're coming from MBTI and you're not understanding, every time I see Socionics, there's these weird letters, LII, ESC, LSC, IEE, IEI, EII, you know, it's probably annoying. It's probably like why do you have to change the letter scheme? Well, for one of the most important things to realize is that these are not the same types. Um, these two systems are distant cousins, and MBTI was created mainly as like a business tool. Meanwhile, Socionics was something that was elaborated and expanded on to further the work of Jung. So um, you have to understand that there was a different kind of rigor or like dedication to living up to what Jung had started with socionics. So the types are very different, and in fact, they're much clearer and they're much more interesting. Actually, they're a lot more multifaceted. So right now, if you understand your MBTI type and you think that it gives you like it gives you offers you clarity and better understanding of some of your strengths and what makes you stand out, makes you unique, then I'm excited to tell you that learning socionics will only do that to a much greater extent. So, but here's the obstacle, right? How am I supposed to learn this when all of the lettering is completely different? So that's what I'm going to teach you how to do. I'm going to teach you how to convert the types into the socionics types. Okay, so like I said before, these are different types, but they have a similar structure. It's just that one was sort of haphazardly put together, and the other was put together a lot more carefully. So there's a lot more detail and intricacies in the socionics types. Okay, so how do we do this? All right, well, let's start with a type in MBTI. Okay, so we have ISTJ. Now, the way that we get these letters to represent the type is based off the functions. So I'll only spend a moment on this, but basically the functions, for the ISTJ are SITE. Okay, so taking this, how do we get this, SI and then TE and turn it into ISTJ? Well, what happens is first we look and we say, okay, it's an ST type. So it's a sensing, thinking type. Okay. And so we have the ST right there. And then as far as, whether it's introverted or extroverted, you just look at the strongest type of information. So for ISTJ, it's SI. Okay, so if SI is the strongest, then it's an introverted element or it's an introverted function. So as a result, you get IST. Now, what about this J? How does the J come in? So if you think about it, technically the ISTJ, because it has SI first, which is a perceiving function, you would think it would be ISTP. But actually, the way that they do it with MBTI is they use the first extroverted element. So the first extroverted element is what defines whether it's a P or a J. So in the case of ISTJ, you have SI, which is a perception element, and then you have TE, which is an extroverted element. So because that's the first extroverted element, it's a J because it's a judging function. So now we've got ISTJ. Okay, so just to further illustrate my point, let's take an ENFJ. An ENFJ is also, so this is a judging type. The ISTJ is technically a perceiving type because they perceive first. That's their primary way of approaching. It's just that what the world sees first is the J. So when it comes to ENFJ, they are their first element or their first function is FE. So FE and then NI. Okay, but they're a J still because their first element is an extroverted element. So that's how it's structured in MBTI. Now, when you move to Socionics, I'm sure you've seen that we have the three letters, and then we have what's supposed to be a way to help newcomers coming in. We use four letters as well, but because of the differences and the community sort of insists on using this other format. So I'll give you an example. Um, so for the ISTJ, it would actually be ISTP because Socionics and the people that use Socionics believe, well, okay, if you're using SI first, then you're not a judging type. So why are we using the J? And so instead, Socionics uses the P because the first element is a perceiving function. And as a result, every single type is treated that way. Whatever the first function is, that's what defines whether it's a P or J. And so that's the difference there. But a lot of people would probably feel, coming from MBTI, they probably feel a lot more comfortable using the four-letter system because they're so used to it. But because of this critical difference, it just makes it more difficult to do so. Because every time that you try to progress and learn more about the types, okay, you'll be like, oh, well, what type is that again? And then you'll have to, try to remember, is it a P or is it a J, and do this whole process. And it just gets confusing because then you're thinking about the other type and you're thinking about this type. And the letters are so similar, but the types are so different. And then in some cases, it's slightly similar, and in other cases, it's not. Sometimes the conversion works over just perfectly. And so it's an IST, it's like the letters are the same in Socionics and in BTI. So that's confusing. Now you got to keep track of more things. So I would argue it's actually a lot clearer and a lot simpler to use the three letters. Besides, you don't necessarily need four letters anyways, and I'll explain how. So the way it works in Socionics, you have the letters that you're going to use are going to be introversion and extroversion. So I and E, okay. And then you're going to use logic and ethics. So instead of feeling, instead of an F, it's an E, okay. So logic and ethics. And then you're going to have intuition and sensing. Now in MBTI, it's N and S. In Socionics, the word is intuition. It doesn't start with an N. So in Socionics, we use I. Okay, so we have I, and then we have S. So you may be saying, well, I don't understand. If you have introversion, that's already I. So intuition, why are we using I again? Well, it's just because we all understand intuitively that one of the placements is for introversion and extroversion, and the others are for the types of information or the functions. So it doesn't matter. And it's actually a lot easier. I'll explain how. So the way that it works, let's start with the ISTJ, right? So we have SI first, and then we have TE second. Okay. So what we do is we just say, okay, well, this is an ST type. Okay, so we have sensing first, and then we have logic. And then after that, we ask ourselves, well, which one is, the first one, the most important one? Is it introverted or extroverted? And so in this case, it's introverted. So we have S, L for logic instead of thinking, and then I, SLI. That right there is the type. And it's so easy and so simple and so straightforward. That's actually a lot harder to do the MBTI one. It just may be easier because of how, you were brought into it and it's something you're familiar with. But we're going to move on, and I'm going to use a different type. Okay. So the next one's going to be one of those where we use both the eyes. Okay. So this is actually my type. It goes intuition. So we're going to do the INFJ is what it is in the MBTI. So INFJ. So we've got NI and then we've got FE. Okay. So now we know intuition is an I. Okay. And then ethics is an E. Okay. So we're going to go intuition, ethics. So I, E, And then we ask ourselves, well, if it's NI is first, then we know it's introverted. So the last one is just telling us what the first one's introversion or extroversion is. Is it an introverted or extroverted element? So IE, and then because it's introverted, I. So that's relatively straightforward. And if you think about it, it's actually really easy to figure out what these letters are. Right now, let's just take a random type, because I've been using a guide over here, but let's just take a random type, right? Let's just take the INTP. Okay, so we know it's TI first, and then NE. Okay, so TI, thinking, is logic, and then intuition is I. So we've got LI, and it's an introverted type, so it's LII. And that naturally fills things in because at the end of the day, we know logic first for this type, intuition second, and then we have the third one which says, okay, well, it's an introverted type. So what kind of logic? It's introverted logic. It's TI, right? So now we know that because the first element or the first function is TI, that means consequently that the second one is going to be extroverted. So that intuition is extroverted, it's NE. So it gives you everything you need. You have the first two functions, and therefore you know the time. Um, and somehow it's a lot more efficient and effective, which is something you'll even find with socionics in general. It's just a lot more effective at describing the types. In the same way here that we see that MBTI sort of had all of these built-in redundancies, um, I would actually say that that would even be giving MBTI too much credit, because a lot of times there's not a lot of redundancies in MBTI. Um, that would mean an attempt to give further clarity. There's really not a lot of that. In socionics, there's actually sometimes, in some cases, too much clarity or too much explanatory attempts, that it can actually become a little bit disorienting, especially for newcomers coming in, which is why my channel is geared the entire way that it is, so that I can bring in people from, MBTI into Socionics to see how much better a system it is, to see how much better this system can explain some of the intricacies of what it means to be you, but not all of the intricacies because you're a lot more than your personality type. But it does such a better job doing that than what you'll see with MBTI. So um, this is this is this should clear a lot of things up on how to use the letters, how to get your introduction into socionics. And if it doesn't, just spend a little bit of time with it or watch the video over again. I think that this should give you everything you need. Um, we'll do one or two more just to get some final practice in, and then I'll give you some resources that I think will be helpful. So um, we've got um, we've got the EII. Okay. So what this is the INFP in MBTI. So for the INFP, we've got FI and then we've got NE. Okay, so FI is what? Is it logic or is it ethics? Okay, it's ethics. So we've got E, and then we've got intuition, which is an I. And then we say, okay, well, is it introverted or extroverted? The first element is introverted. So we've got E, I. Okay. So that's how you do the conversion from MBTI to Socionics. I really hope that that offered you some clarity and gave you some direction moving forward. Now, what I will tell you is just in general, like I've been saying this whole time, I think that Socionics has so much better explanatory power and it can teach you a lot more about yourself than what you're accustomed to with MBTI. In fact, I would say Socionics can even be harsher and reveal things to you that you need to work on. In that way, if you care about becoming a better version of yourself, I think that you'll find that Socionics has a lot more to offer in that regard because um, not only does it show you how you can be better and where you can improve, but it also gives you a path to learning to improve and be better through your relationships with other people. There's a whole part of Socionics that is dedicated to the relationships between types, which is something that people sort of just figure out on their own in MBTI. But because the types aren't even that nuanced, there's not a lot to teach you. And, I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of you guys are probably listening to me and thinking, That's crazy. MBTI has been so insightful and useful and has made such a positive impact on my life. And it probably sounds like I'm knocking a lot of that down, but I'm really not. I acknowledge that, and I think that in general, typology has a lot of power to add insight to our lives and add insight into how we navigate our own self or other people. And so there's a lot of power there, but unfortunately, it just does not measure up to what you'll find in socionics. It can be a little bit difficult to learn in the beginning, but that's why I have all the resources on my channel to do so. So if you're hearing this and something struck a chord, I definitely recommend checking my playlists and looking for the Introduction to Socionics playlist. I'll even put it in the description below. What I'm also going to do, I'm going to provide a link, a couple links, so that you can read up on the types and see how they're different. So even if you do a conversion of one of these types, you say, well, if you're watching this, you might be thinking, well, I'm an INFJ, or well, maybe even better, I'm an ESTP, right? So I want to look at my type. All right, well, when you come to socionics, you're going to find that ESTP is very, very different in socionics. Um, but it's a lot more detailed and a lot more thorough. So you're probably not going to be the same type that you were in MBTI, but hopefully you'll read some of these descriptions, and at the very least, by reading them, you'll become intrigued at just how interesting these types are because they are very nuanced descriptions. So definitely check those out down below in the link, and I'll even include my scheduler if you're interested in getting typed. I do sessions and I post them on my YouTube channel, so you can check that out as well. So in the meantime, if this was insightful to you whatsoever, give me a like, helps me out a lot. Comment down below, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you next time.